I think the title's fairly self-explanatory, so I don't really want to waste time rambling. I'm going to be discussing which of the 3 legendary Sannin would win if they had a 3-way brawl. The only specification I feel needs to be made is looking at all 3 Sannin within their respective primes and strongest forms during the Naruto manga. So this would mean the forms are Sage Jiraiya, Hydra Orochimaru, and 100 Healing Tsunade. This also means I won't be discussing Boruto Orochimaru. When discussing the Sannin in relation to one another, it only makes sense to start with all the various statements and implications that they are all relative to one another. I don't outright disagree with these statements by any means, but I need to go over the specifics of what they mean, as it isn't as simple as saying they're all 3 equals and ending the video right here. For those unfamiliar, the statements I'm referencing include the databook stating Jiraiya is on par with Orochimaru, the fanbook stating that Tsunade is a match for both Orochimaru and Jiraiya, and Ebisu saying it takes a Sannin to kill Orochimaru. This is also all playing into the general idea that the Sannin are just meant to all be comparable to one another. One way to demonstrate this is with the parallel drawn between the Sannin and Team 7. Team 7 is clearly meant to parallel the 3 Sannin, with each member of Team 7 having one of the Sannin as a mentor and sharing traits with them. This parallel is made extremely obvious when Team 7 reunites during the war, where they perform a 3-way deadlock just like the Sannin, and are directly compared to the Sannin when doing this. This is important, as Sakura had just caught up to Naruto and Sasuke, so Team 7 being compared to the Sannin when all 3 can finally fight on par adds credence to the Sannin all being comparable. Now I said I wanted to go over specifics around the Sannin all being comparable, and what I was referring to is what forms they're comparable in. The most common argument here is if Jiraiya is relative to Orochimaru in Sage mode, or his base. I went over my views on this in my Orochimaru video, but I'll recap it here. All of the direct statements around the Sannin being relative come from part 1, and we obviously don't see Sage mode until part 2. This also applies to Tsunade's Strength of 100 seal and Orochimaru's Hydra form. It would be weird from a writing standpoint to tell us these characters are relative, but have it refer to forms of the characters we as an audience don't know about and won't see for hundreds of chapters. Especially in the case of the data books, where they are just meant to give us information, it would be counterintuitive to tell us the Sannin are relative and have it mean in the forms they achieve in part 2. This wouldn't really inform us on anything, as it would be speaking on things we don't know about yet as an audience. On top of this, the Sannin's general reputation of being able to contend with each other seems to be based on their normal forms. Jiraiya refers to entering Sage mode as him breaking away from the title Sannin and becoming a Hermit Sage. Thus, statements like Ebisu saying that one of the Sannin is needed to kill Orochimaru shouldn't include Sage mode. The forms of the Sannin that should be relative based on these statements would be base Jiraiya, Orochimaru before losing his arms, and Tsunade without the Strength of 100. With it established that the Sannin are relative without their special forms, it's only logical we then compare these enhanced forms. Starting with Orochimaru, as this is the shortest to go over, reason being, we don't actually know that much about Orochimaru's Hydra form. All we know for sure is that it's stronger than Orochimaru normally, and that the Hydra is larger than Manda. Aside from this, the Hydra does literally nothing other than get sealed by Itachi. Now, this isn't a terrible look, as Itachi's already confirmed stronger than Orochimaru, and he used the Totsuka blade, which is insanely hard to deal with. The other thing about the Hydra form is it doesn't grant Orochimaru any new abilities he can use in this form, at least that we know of. On the contrary, Tsunade's Strength of 100 very clearly gives her access to new abilities. We see this very clearly in the Madara fight, where Tsunade is able to heal from being stabbed to the torso, and is able to continue fighting with 2 Susanoo blades through her torso. The data book also clearly states she gains a power boost from using this technique. Tsunade's strength in this form is so great that she can fracture Madara's ribcage Susanoo, and Madara even states Tsunade has greater power than the Raikage. This is particularly impressive, as the Raikage was amped during this fight by Inoki's Light and Boulder Jutsu, and was able to damage Madara's humanoid Susanoo. Madara was very clearly holding back against the Kage, but this wouldn't change the comparison between Tsunade and the Raikage. Jiraiya's Sage Mode is the transformation that we know the most about. While Jiraiya's Sage Mode is imperfect, it still provides him with a stats amp and gives him access to Senjutsu. The databook states Sage Mode dramatically increases Jiraiya's Taijutsu, Ninjutsu, and Genjutsu. How much of an amp Sage Mode is exactly isn't known, but you may be able to say it's stronger than the Curse Mark, which in the case of Jirobo is a 10 times increase in strength. The reason for this is that the Curse Mark is an attempt to create Sage Mode power when Orochimaru was unable to use Sage Mode. This also might imply that Jiraiya's Sage Mode is a greater increase than Orochimaru's Hydra, as Orochimaru uses the power of the Curse Mark as a catalyst of sorts for the Hydra. I do think this is rather vague, however. It's not not everyone can use the curse mark either, and Jiraiya isn't even a perfect sage. What we can say about Sage Mode for sure is that the speed amp specifically is massive. Naruto says Sage Mode is faster than KCM1, and the speed of Naruto and KCM1 is constantly pointed out as being exceptional. The first time we even see KCM1, Naruto blitzes Kisame and is compared to Minato right after. So Sage Mode being faster than this should explain why its speed is impressive. The only caveat is Naruto is a perfect sage and Jiraiya is not. But Jiraiya's Sage Mode still seems to give him all the benefits of Sage Mode. The most you may be able to say is Jiraiya gets a slightly weaker amp than Naruto. Sage Mode being confirmed as speed amp at all should place Jiraiya above the other two Sannin in terms of speed. It's questionable Tsunade or Orochimaru get faster from using 100 healings in the Hydra form, but even if they do, we have no idea how much of an increase they are. With Sage Mode, we know it is a significant increase to one's speed, and we just can't claim that about the other forms of the Sannin. Just to be clear, it's technically possible that 100 healings in the Hydra form are massive increases to speed beyond that of Sage Mode, but until we see evidence of that, we just can't claim it to be the case. Along with increased stats, Jiraiya's Sage Mode allows him to use various new techniques. The most basic is that it allows him to use the Massive Rasengan. The databook does actually imply that using the Massive Rasengan is something that is specific to his Sage Mode and not something he can do in his base form. Aside from just being a powered up Rasengan, there isn't much to say about this, as the one time Jiraiya uses it, it gets absorbed by pain. The databook does claim Jiraiya can carve away a mountain using the Massive Rasengan, and regardless if you believe this or not, it doesn't really mean much. All it tells us is that it's a powerful physical attack, which we already knew anyways. Moving on, Kabari Senbon allows Jiraiya to fire out his hair as needle-like projectiles. And while this jutsu also gets stopped by pain the one time it's used, the databook has a pretty crazy statement regarding it. The third databook states the Kabari Senbon to be the fastest among attacks in Sage Mode, placing it as Jiraiya's fastest attack. Now, some people say this means Sage attacks outside of even Jiraiya's, and say it means he's faster than all of Sage Naruto's attacks, but I don't think this works. Reason being, the third databook says it only covers up to volume 43 of the manga, and this only includes up to chapter 402, which is before Naruto uses Sage Mode. This attack should still be Jiraiya's fastest attack, and the databook also says he can fire a near infinite amount, which is obviously a bit hyperbolic, but it does mean he can fire it a great number of times. Activating Sage Mode also means Jiraiya will be summoning Ma and Pa, which gives him access to arguably his strongest jutsu, Demonic Illusion Gamarincho. This is the genjutsu that Ma and Pa used against pain that allowed Jiraiya to take out the three paths he was fighting. Ma and Pa also planned to use the same technique to take out the Diva path during his fight with Naruto, but it got disrupted. Similarly to the Kabari Senbon, Gamarincho's real power is explained to us in the third databook. Here it is explained that Gamarincho is the most powerful genjutsu, and the third databook has an entry for the Tsukuyomi in it. This might seem crazy to some people, but the Gamarincho has never been resisted once cast, so nothing really contradicts this. The only downfall of Gamarincho is Ma and Pa need to stay static to charge up the natural energy needed to perform the genjutsu, and then they need to sing uninterrupted before it takes effect. While this is a weakness, Jiraiya was able to pull this off against three paths of pain, so unless Jiraiya's opponent is massively overwhelming him, he has a good chance of being able to cast Gamarincho. Now to actually go into how a fight between the Sannin would play out. There's so many different angles to look at this from, so the way I'm going to do this is establish some central ideas for this fight, and then go from there. First off, Tsunade will likely be able to kill Jiraiya if she lands a punch, and would damage Orochimaru heavily. Being stronger than the Raikage, someone who could harm a Naruto who had long since passed Jiraiya, places her at the level of power that she should be able to kill Jiraiya in a single shot. I would say the same for Orochimaru, but Orochimaru has the ability to regenerate himself, making killing him with conventional means a little more difficult. Thus, I think Tsunade would do damage to Orochimaru just like Jiraiya, but it may not kill Orochimaru. The other thing I want to establish is that Jiraiya's Gamarincho would be a certain win if cast. Being the strongest genjutsu would mean it can certainly affect Orochimaru, considering Orochimaru was immobilized by basic genjutsu from Itachi, and Gamarincho should surpass all of Itachi's genjutsu. Tsunade doesn't have a direct argument to show that she wouldn't be affected, but she certainly hasn't shown any impressive level of genjutsu resistance. Thus, she should also be put under Gamarincho if it's cast, and this would then allow Jiraiya to finish off Orochimaru and Tsunade whilst they're paralyzed. As you may have noticed, I brought up a solid path to victory for both Tsunade and Jiraiya, but I have yet to even mention Orochimaru. That is because I see Orochimaru as having the lowest chance of winning this fight and not really having a solid win con. The only thing you can really say is he uses the Hydra to just attack the others, but the Hydra's actual power is fairly ambiguous. Tsunade is already meant to be the physical powerhouse of the Sannin, and there's no evidence the Hydra gives a boost to Orochimaru so great that it allows him to contend with Tsunade's power, especially when Tsunade has the 100 healings active. The Hydra is also lacking in any speed feats, as in it literally has none. Being charitable, we may be able to say it's faster than Orochimaru normally by interpreting stronger to mean it surpasses Orochimaru in overall stats, not just power. Even then, it's by an unknown amount, and Tsunade can just charge through any attacks from the Hydra via her healing. She does something extremely similar against Madara, and literally continues attacking normally with 2 massive Susanoo blades fully impaling her. As for how the Hydra would fare against Jiraiya, it may not be at a clear power disadvantage, but it still doesn't have a good case. As mentioned before, the Hydra is seriously lacking in speed feats, and we know Sage Mode is a large amp to use your speed as well as giving you sensory capabilities. This would mean Jiraiya could probably just avoid any attacks from the Hydra if he needs to. I say if he needs to because who is physically stronger between Sage Jiraiya and the Hydra isn't even super clear. I laid out earlier you can argue Sage Mode is a greater amp than the Hydra, but I'll once again be charitable to Orochimaru and say it's ambiguous if Sage Mode is a greater amp. Even if the Hydra is stronger than Jiraiya, there is a potential way for Jiraiya to easily counter it. Jiraiya's Dark Swamp Jutsu turns the ground beneath his opponent into a swamp that then engulfs them. We see him attempt to use this to submerge the giant snakes Orochimaru summons during the Search of Tsunade arc, and while he does fail to submerge them, he implies that when at full power, he would have been able to submerge the snakes. While these are nameless snakes and likely not as large as the Hydra, they are still massive snakes. On top of this, Jiraiya would have an increase to the jutsu from his Sage Mode, so it isn't unreasonable to think he could just straight up submerge Orochimaru's Hydra form. Even if he couldn't submerge it, the jutsu would restrict the movement of Orochimaru massively, making him even easier to avoid. When Jiraiya failed to submerge Orochimaru's summons, the swamp still caused them to stop moving, so the same would apply here. Even being as charitable to Orochimaru as possible, he has no way to land hits on Jiraiya and is physically inferior to Tsunade. Thus, Orochimaru is the least likely to win this fight. Now for Tsunade. I just got done explaining how she could probably beat the Hydra, but what about Jiraiya? As I said earlier, Tsunade could kill Jiraiya if she lands a hit, but landing a hit on Sage Jiraiya is a tough ask. The speed Sage Mode grants Jiraiya, along with the sensory capabilities, means he can avoid attacks from Tsunade if needed. Along with this, Jiraiya is aware of Tsunade's monstrous strength, so he would likely be extra cautious to not allow her to land a hit on him. Meaning, while I think Tsunade can beat Orochimaru, and has a way to potentially kill Jiraiya, she would struggle to pull this off in practice. That leaves Jiraiya, and Jiraiya's ability to cast Gamarinsho with Ma and Pa is the most definitive win con of any of the Sannin here, as casting it would be an instant win. The others' abilities literally wouldn't matter if Gamarinsho lands, due to it paralyzing them, so the only real question is if Jiraiya can land it. Gamarinsho does require charge time, but even with this charge time, Jiraiya managed to avoid Pain's attacks and cast Gamarinsho. With Jiraiya being the fastest amongst the three, it shouldn't be much of an issue for him to avoid their attacks while Ma and Pa cast Gamarinsho. This will become even easier if Tsunade and Orochimaru distract each other at all while Jiraiya starts the jutsu. Neither should know what Gamarinsho is, so they may not have the urgency to stop it. Even if they did, Jiraiya is faster and has numerous evasive jutsu he can use to keep himself safe, so he should be able to successfully cast Gamarinsho. Overall, Jiraiya is the only one who has a move that results in a surefire win. This is especially advantageous because it would take out both opponents at once, whereas Tsunade and Orochimaru would need to target people one at a time. Jiraiya takes this one with just how insanely broken Ma and Pa's genjutsu capabilities are, and Sage Mode's overall impressive amp. As always, I hope y'all enjoyed this breakdown. If you did, I always appreciate you liking and subscribing.